Welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. One of the most famous opening lines in English literature is from the novel A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. Set during the French Revolution of 1775, but written in the Victorian era in 1859, Charles Dickens started the book with this line: "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." Then goes on to speak about why it was indeed the best of times, the worst of times. And most readers of that book at the time said, well, yeah, that may have been true of back then in 1775 during the French Revolution, but they also felt it was true of their time, which was, of course, the mid-19th century, about 1859 when that book was written. I remember reading it as a young boy in the late 1960s, early 70s, and thinking, well, yeah, that sounds like the time in which I'm living. And today, I still identify with that sentiment. It is the best of times, and it is the worst of times. Why? Because we see in the world around us wickedness. We see suffering. We see depravity. We see things happening with war and political developments that are extremely disturbing. We see society becoming more wicked. Even in the field of religion and even institutional Christianity, we see much that is wrong. We see compromise. We see false teachings. We see open sin being tolerated and accepted and even embraced in Christian churches. And so we could look at it and say, yeah, this is the worst of times. But then we also see the spread of the gospel. And if I speak quite frequently about these kind of things, I speak about the church growth that's taking place. I speak about how the Bible is now, through technology, being increasingly translated into all the languages of the world. How the gospel is reaching more people today than ever before. It is indeed the best of times, and it's the worst of times. How can that be? I think it's quite simple, and it's this, that the light of the gospel is getting brighter. And we should expect that. The Bible does say of Jesus in that passage from Isaiah that we quote so often in the run-up to Christmas, of the increase of his government, there shall be no end. The power of the gospel, the light of the gospel is shining brighter than ever before, and more people are coming to the light of the gospel. But there's also the darkness around is getting darker. So the darkness is getting darker and the light is shining brighter. You know, there's a wonderful verse in Isaiah chapter 59 verse 19, which I remember being used a few years ago in what was a popular worship song of the time. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will lift up a standard against him. And that is indeed true. Whenever the darkness gets deeper, the light of the gospel shines brighter. We see this in the book of Acts, that when acts of persecution and cruelty were unleashed against the Christian church, almost invariably those acts of persecution are immediately followed by breakthroughs in the gospel and great breakthroughs in the growth of the church. Why? Because the darkness comes in like a flood, but the Lord raises up a standard and the light of the gospel shines forth. And so we can never look at things and say, well, things are so wonderful now, it's just getting better and better and better. And yet we can never truly say either, although it's getting wickeder and wickeder. It's both. It's the best of times and it's the worst of times. Now, you may sometimes wish that you lived in days that weren't quite as extreme as that, but we need to seize this as an opportunity. And every time we see something that speaks of wickedness in the world today and you feel, gosh, how dark can things get? Well, that means it's a greater opportunity for the light of the gospel to shine. God bless you today as you live in these best of times and these worst of times. And join us again tomorrow for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.